The 32nd book that I finished in 2024 is called Afterparties. It's a collection of Cambodian American short stories by the author Anthony Veasna Snow. This came out in 2021, and very sadly he passed away in 2020, so he did not see the completion of his publication. But this is a really good book of short stories, a really good collection. There are 9 stories in the book. It took about, I don't know, 5 hours or so to read all of them. 4 of them stand out more than the others for me. The first story is called Three Women of Chuck's Donuts. And it's about a Cambodian American mother who owns a donut shop and her 2 daughters who have to stay there with her most of the time working. And this really reminded me a lot of some of the restaurants in the area that I live, the Chinese restaurants and the Indian restaurants. You'll often see the children of the owners there doing their homework or playing or whatever. And so I really connected to that story quite a bit. Super King's Son Scores Again is a funny story about an older Cambodian American who used to be a really good basketball player, but now he's become the owner of a bodega. And the current basketball team is pretty bad, and so he starts to coach them a little bit, but he's not very successful in creating the relationships necessary to move the kids in the direction that he needs to move them. Samali Siri Samali is a story toward the end. I think it's the 8th story in the book. And it's about a niece who is a nurse, and she is taking care of her aunt in a nursing home, but her aunt has Alzheimer's, and so she does not recognize her. And another niece comes to visit, and they don't really know each other, and there's just a lot of grief in the story and a lot of struggle between the 2 nieces as to what might be best for the aunt. Excellent story. And then finally, what I think is the best story in the book is the last story in the book, and it's called Generational Differences. And it is a mother who is writing a letter to her son explaining a school shooting that happened at a school that she teaches at in California. The school shooting is not real. Obviously, there are real school shootings, but this particular school shooting is not real. But it sets up the story and sets up her love for her son, and it's just a wonderful story. I learned so much about Cambodia from this book, and I knew next to nothing. I know Pol Pot was terrible, and I know the Khmer Rouge regime was terrible, and that is about all I knew. And that Khmer Rouge regime and Pol Pot and the genocide seeps its way into every single story in this book, which I think, suggests how much that has affected the Cambodian culture. And so there's a disconnect between the adults who came here as immigrants in this book and the children that they've had in America, because of course the adults were imprisoned in concentration camps in Cambodia or were under the thumb of the Khmer Rouge, whereas the children can't really identify with that very much. So it permeates every single story in the book and really makes this worth reading and worth teaching. There are a couple stories in the book that are really filthy dirty, just very sexual. The 4 that I named are not, but there are some that make it inappropriate for high school age kids even. I think shouldn't probably read 3 or 4 of the stories in this book. But if you were to excerpt any of the 4 that I listed, I think they could totally be taught, even maybe to middle schoolers. There's nothing, especially the last story, could be taught to middle schoolers, and definitely for high school students. So I highly recommend this book. I think it's an A+. I'm really glad that I read it.